We have Congressman Trey Gowdy with us now. He's got a brand new book out. Appreciate him joining us. And Trey, I got to start with this because everybody, we said you were coming on, and they said, are you going to ask him about what he said yesterday on Fox News? And so we have this clip. You know what you're walking into here. I was like, oh, man, this timing was a hell of a timing here. So before we get into the book, before we dive into that, here is yesterday. Congressman Trey Gowdy on Fox News.
Our system is reactive. Something bad happens, we react to it. And what people are crying for now is how can we prevent this? How can we stop it? And the only way to stop it is to identify the shooter ahead of time or keep the weapons out of their hands. And so we're going to have a conversation of freedom versus protecting children. I mean, how many school shootings does it take before we're going to have a conversation about keeping firearms out? It's always a young white male, almost always. I mean, did anyone this morning think, I wonder if that was a female? Did any of y'all think that? I mean, there's been one school shooting involving a female. One. Tennessee. But other than that, it is usually young white males.
All right. This is reacting live. Yeah. And turn your mentions off, Trey. What
I'm not
do you
on
wish?
social media. I am not.
You're not.
Social media.
That's good for you right now. Okay, with a day to reflect, what do you wish you would have said? Would you change any of the commentary that we just played there?
No, I mean, obviously, if I had a longer format, which I had for 16 years, I could extrapolate on what I meant by that. I mean, we have gun control. There are controls on who can have guns, where you can have them, and what kind of guns you can have. And I spent 6 years prosecuting gun cases and then 10 years prosecuting murder cases. My point was pretty simple, and actually, I don't understand the argument against it. By the time a murder takes place, we've already lost. Somebody's been killed. How can we prevent the murder? So you either focus on the shooter or you track the firearm. And if you track this firearm, it was lawfully purchased. So I really defy anyone to say, knowing everything we know now, I would still sell 3 firearms to this shooter. Because what you're saying is that you're okay with what happened. You would not do anything to change it. And
on what legal basis, Trey, would you not have sold the firearms to this individual?
I think if you did even a cursory review from a mental health standpoint, this person doesn't need a pair of scissors or a plastic fork, much less a
Wouldn't
firearm.
that be, sorry to cut you off, but wouldn't that be, I always come back to parenting. I don't understand how this person who is clearly mentally ill, I think most school shootings or most mass shootings in general that are like these, someone is mentally ill. And so to me, I look at it and I say, mom or dad, just like with the crazy trans chick in Nashville and just like this crazy trans dude in Minneapolis, mom and dad, if they were paying any attention at all, should have said this person should not have access to firearms. I look at it as parenting. So one, I want to get your thoughts on that. Secondly, the way we define mass shooting is I think often broken because most mass shooters are not young male, white males, like you said. It's mostly young black men who commit the vast majority of murders, who commit the vast majority of violent crime. So I do think a lot of people reacted not only to what you said, but you saying, hey, it's almost always white males.
Yeah, when I consider mass shooting, I don't accept the FBI's definition of it. If you accept the FBI's definition, we've had, 700 mass shootings? So, two rival gangs shooting each other out over drug turf, I don't consider that to be a mass shooting. I consider a mass shooting to be Sandy Hook, Columbine, Uvalde, what happened in Tennessee, what happened yesterday, completely innocent targets that had absolutely nothing to do with whoever the perpetrator was. Las Vegas is another perfect example of what I consider to be a mass shooting. So the former prosecutor in me rejects the notion of how the FBI tracks mass shootings. The answer to your first question about parenting, I think we're in one accord there. The Crumley parents were prosecuted because they had either actual or constructive knowledge that their son was going to do something with a firearm at that school, and they wound up being prosecuted. So it always gets a little bit dangerous when you start holding parents responsible for the actions of their children. But when you can prove that the parent knew or should have known and did not take any steps to do so, I mean, it's rare for parents to go ask that their children be involuntarily committed. It would be rare for a parent to call the police in a state that had a red flag law. So how else, if the parents, parents are notoriously non-objective. I mean, that's why we love them. We're not objective about our children. Our parents are not always objective about us. But the price that we are paying right now, I mean, we've had school shooting after school shooting after school shooting. And I wholeheartedly agree with the notion. In fact, in my hometown, we have a police presence in every school, and that deters. So what the president's doing in D.C. works. Police presence deters. This was a private school. So government cannot dictate to a private religious school that you must have armed guards. So my point is, and honestly, I caught it from the left and right yesterday. The left didn't like the fact that I made mention of Jesus. The right didn't like the fact that I mentioned gun control. But what I think some people maybe lose sight of is we already have gun control. You and I cannot walk into certain places with a fully automatic machine gun. That is gun control. The question is, can we find something to lower the number of the mass shootings the way I define them?
Okay, Trey, wait. I need you to help me out here for a second. So, I lived in New York City, and in Times Square, there are big signs that say gun-free zone, and there are still shootings in Times Square because the people that are going to shoot people don't care about the signs. So when you're talking about gun control, are you? It's sounding to me, and I could be missing this, like you think there's a better way to do gun control instead of we have a ton of gun control already, and it doesn't work to stop mass shootings like this. So why would we do more gun control? Can you help me untangle that?
Sure. Yeah, I did it. I did it when I was a state prosecutor. I called the feds in and said, we're going to have summer of silence. We're not going to wait. I mean, look, if I'm prosecuting a murder case, I've lost. Somebody's already dead. So I got with the U.S. Attorney's Office because they have really, really strict firearm statutes. There are a number of people prohibited from possessing firearms. Court-martial, adjudicated mentally ill, felons, subject to a court order and a restraining order in domestic violence case. Here in the country, unlawfully. That's a big one that never gets talked about. You cannot lawfully possess a firearm.
No, so I get it. So what does that have to do with what we just saw in the shooting in Minneapolis?
Prosecute them. Well, that's my point, is do we have a law that would have prevented what happened yesterday? And if we don't have a law, can we fashion one that balances people's freedom? And
I think the answer is no, Trey. I think this is why people on the right are upset at you. I think the answer is there is no answer for is there a law that will balance freedom with balance freedom with the need to protect the public and stop something like this. Unless you're going to talk about red flag laws, mental health stuff, and really get deep into that. But that's a sticky one.
Is that we're just going to live with these mass shootings.
Well, I think one thing we could do is, and I'll ask you this. I mean, we've been asking this question. If you look, you mentioned mass shootings, so specifically taking the school shootings as an example, the school shooter in Nashville, clearly trans, met it up on all sorts of things mentally. We agree that parents clearly should not have had these people with guns, right? Same thing I think is true now in Minneapolis, former student. I think one thing we could do is address, should we be giving these people the medication that I think is prone to making them more violent, and then taking their anger and their violence out on the schools. That would be one answer for me, is we should have a big investigation, because the trans community is very small. There are not very many people who are trans. And now we have two different trans people who have shown up at Christian schools and slaughtered innocent kids.
Well, yeah, I mean, Trey, to answer your question, because you said, well, then we have to just live with these shootings. The reality, I think, as we see it, is that a big problem is that you have a class of people right now, a group of people who are being told that there's a genocide being perpetrated against them by the biggest voices in the Democrat Party, by the biggest newspapers, by some of the biggest channels on TV, and by the culture more broadly, and that's essentially a celebration of a dangerous, or rather celebrating a mental illness, which can create, in some circumstances, a dangerous outcome like we have seen now more than once, as you pointed out, including at the Covington school shooting. But to get into the gun side of this specifically, I don't know what. So if we want to have a conversation about mental health, we want to have a conversation about not celebrating mental illness, that I'm all for. But on the gun side of it, I mean, you had to prosecute people for gun law violations. There's a ton of different ways you can be prosecuted for gun stuff. As you know better than 99% of the population, there's no perfect security and there's no perfect way to get everybody. I mean, the truth is, Trey, mass shootings actually are rare. So when you say we're going to live with mass shootings, it sounds a little bit like what the Democrats say, which is if we can just have one, let's get only 10-round magazines. That'll save people. Let's not have AR-15s in this state. That'll save people.
10 people are dead. That just means 10 people are dead. So I've never talked about magazine capacity because that just tells me you will accept 10 dead people, but you won't accept 11.
But I mean, if you're somebody who doesn't think, if there's not a law that you can come up with, given what you used to do, that would have stopped this, that is workable. My point is maybe there's not a law that is workable that would stop something like this. And maybe that is actually the reality we deal with in a free society. It's tragic, but it's true.
Well, I would. So I don't know the last time you traveled, but I waited in line a long time to board a plane because we said never again is someone going to do something with an airplane. I have to show ID almost everywhere I go. And so we're willing to trade in certain pockets of our lives. We are willing to trade a little bit of inconvenience for public safety.
But isn't the 2A community already trading a lot? I mean, we got all these rules. Is my point. I mean, so it's like if one person once a year is able to do something on a plane, does that mean we're going to add more rules into that? We actually just got rid of the liquid thing.
And there's not a constitutional right to air travel. I think a lot of Second Amendment people would say. So what would your solution?
No,
let's close it up this way. Let me tell you this, Trey. By the way, the book is The Color of Death, Trey Gowdy. I want to make sure that we address this. Let's pretend that I gave you a magic wand and you could design a system that would stop excess violent death while also preserving everyone's constitutional rights. What would that look like in the mind of sorcerer magician Trey Gowdy?
Well, I would do what I did for 6 years. The Obama administration had anemically low firearms prosecutions. For an administration that talked about gun control for 8 years, their gun prosecutions were anemically low. And I get that it is not nearly as sexy to prosecute a felon in possession of a firearm case as murder, but that's what you have to do. You have to enforce the laws that you currently have, which we are not doing.
Trey, that's a totally separate. I mean, what you're talking about, the Obama administration wasn't, and this was true with Krasner as the DA in Philadelphia. You know this. They weren't pushing those cases because it disproportionately affected the minority community. Young black men were being prosecuted at much higher rates for those. That's a totally separate thing from somebody who's a complete lunatic who wants to go up and shoot up a school. Like, you can prosecute all the gang members you want across the country. That's not going to stop what happened in Minneapolis. We both know that.
Well, no. One of the prohibited persons is whether or not you've been adjudicated mentally ill. And
had this person been adjudicated mentally ill? I'm not aware of that, if that was the case.
But that's my point. Had anybody tried? Had anybody sought an involuntary confinement? Or when we go back to Congress, it was the Republicans, conservatives, who said the fact that a Social Security judge has deemed you disabled due to a mental illness is not a bar to you possessing a firearm. I wonder if we could go back in time if we would tweak our position.
But you're advocating for something that would not have made any difference to the shooting that we just happened as a solution to the shooting, Trey. That's where I think there's a problem.
Well, then I would ask you, what would you do? Or are we just going to accept and grieve in the aftermath of more death?
I mean, we talked extensively yesterday about putting more armed security in places like schools. I don't know if you know this, Trey. We actually had on Mary Margaret Olahan, who said Catholic schools in Minnesota, specifically after Covington, went to the governor and said, hey, we need help. We want more armed guards. Now, I'm not saying that's a cure-all, but it is something. And it is something that, by the way, this shooter took into account. So this was part of the calculation. There was no armed security at this school. So it's not a do-nothing thing. Trey, it sounds a lot like a gun-grabbing Democrat point of view on this one. This is why you're catching all the heat, my friend. I'm a little surprised. Is he gone? Huh? Well,
he hung up on you, Buck.
Color of Death is his book. Was I being rude?
No,
I'm
surprised. I'm surprised he hung up. I think that's the first hang up we've had. Am I wrong? I don't think Pence hung up on me.
I'm just going to tell you guys right now. I think Trey's a nice guy.
Oh, we got him back.
Okay,
he got disconnected.
Trey,
I didn't think he hung up. I was like,
come on, man. Like we're just exchanging ideas here. That was totally polite. You know what, Trey? I'm going to give you. We were pushing your book. I'm going to give you the last word. The Color of Death is the book. Tell us what your final thoughts are on this one. We'll give you the last word.
Well, I did not feel comfortable pushing the book yesterday in light of real life grief. This is fictional, but if people want to know what it's like to prosecute a murder case, I don't think the media gets it right about the interaction between cops and prosecutors, victims and prosecutors, the bond that exists. So I wanted to write a real life account of what it's like to try to catch a killer from the moment the crime happens. Admitting that by the time the murder takes place, there's already been a loss of life, but that happens. It happens all the time. It's what I did for 10 years, and I want people to have a realistic view of what that's like, because miniseries movies and television shows don't get it right.
All right. Okay, we'll leave it there. Trey, thank you for making the time for us, and thanks for answering our questions today. We appreciate it.
No, they're great questions. Look, I want to keep having the conversation, and I appreciate you. Look, I think we all agree we would like a safer society without doing violence to our freedoms. And I think you and I want to get to the same place. And I respect you, even if we may have slightly different paths on how to get there. I am not wed to my way. If there is a better way, it just breaks my heart as I know it does yours to see dead, innocent victims.
Well, that's well said, Trey, and we appreciate that, and we agree with that, and thank you for coming on.
God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.